the Medical AI Podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Felix Beecher, and this is the Medical AI Podcast, a 30-minute thrill ride of big ideas. We talk to a range of top guests, from industry innovators to scientists to philosophers. This is brought to you by Informatech, where I'm the head of healthcare technology. Future Shock is a 1970 book by Alvin Toffler, in which the term future shock refers to the idea that the rapid rate of technological and social change leaves people suffering from overwhelming and shattering stress and disorientation. Well, today I have someone with me who may make you feel future shocked, one of Australia's most prominent doctors, AI aficionado and member of the Association of Professional Futurists. It is none other than Professor Erwin Loh. Erwin, a huge welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Felix, and thank you for such a generous introduction.
Erwin, could you just introduce yourself for those who don't know you and explain a little about your involvement in AI?
Sure. So you're in the UK, Felix. I'm actually in Melbourne in Australia. And I'm the National Chief Medical Officer for St. Vincent's Health, which is the largest not-for-profit health network in this country. And my interest in AI stems from my medical leadership role. I've been in medical leadership roles for many years now. And in that role, I have to keep up to date with the latest trends when it comes to new technologies. And AI is one of those technologies that has the potential to completely transform our health system, the way we deliver care, and also the workforce that works within that system. And as such, I have an interest. And one of my claims to fame is in 2018, I decided to do a review of AI research in health and wrote an article for the BMJ Leader titled The Rise of the Robots in AI. And since then, it's become the most cited article in that journal.
Now, everyone I speak to agrees that, firstly, that we are undergoing a paradigm shift, and secondly, that it's very exciting and these technologies have immense potential benefit. Now, at the same time, do you recognize this concept of future shock? Do you see it?
Yeah, future shock is an interesting concept. It's about when people are confronted with the reality that's about to come, that's so different and mind-bending that they become stunned. And I have seen this. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that the general public uses AI all the time, right? We've all got smartphones. We all use technologies like smart speakers, and they're all powered by really strong AI technologies that a few years ago would have been seen as science fiction. But today we take these things for granted. But when I do a lot of talks on AI around the country and overseas, actually. And most recently, last week, I did a talk around the impact of AI on the health workforce. And when I proposed to the audience that AI will not only change the way clinicians work, it will also create jobs that currently do not exist yet. But even more spectacularly, AI could become the future workforce and replace current clinicians. And that possibility has surprised some people. And that future reality is probably closer than we think.
Yeah, I agree. And I had my own personal experience of future shock last night, actually, with medical AI. And I've been immersed in medical AI for the last 5 years or so. And what happened is that I had some cardiology assessments in the last few months, and I wanted to know what they meant. And so, because they were in highly technical language that I didn't really understand, I didn't really have a lot of time to go and do a whole load of study. So I just pasted in this cardiology report to ChatGPT, and I could ask any queries of this report that I wanted, including at the end, do I have some kind of serious heart condition? To which the answer, thankfully, was no. But I didn't know that until I was querying ChatGPT, which I thought was a remarkable thing. Left me feeling quite stunned, actually.
Yeah, look, ChatGPT is amazing, right? So I've also started to explore the boundaries of its use. And it's really, I mean, people are finding new use cases for it all the time. And your example is a great one when it comes to this discussion that we're having around AI, because with heart palpitations and arrhythmias, the AI could be applied at every single stage of the journey, right? So at the point of when you're getting palpitations and need it diagnosed with an ECG, we already know that smart watches like the Apple Watch has AI in there that powers the single lead ECG that will be able to tell you if you use it on yourself at any time, whether you have atrial fibrillation or not, which is a type of serious heart irregular rhythm. Now, most new ECG machines nowadays will have AI built into them to provide the cardiologist with an initial diagnosis anyway. So the days where the cardiologists have to figure out, based on the rhythm, what the potential diagnoses are over. You'll get that automated system has a screen. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And so you raised an interesting point around ChatGPT, because we know that ChatGPT, although it's very powerful and it will give and provide human-like text that seems highly plausible, we also know that even OpenAI, the company, will warn people. I mean, it's got a pop-up, right, that says that even though an answer sounds highly credible, it may be wrong, right?
It's a very interesting point, because actually the last question I asked it in this process last night was, do I have a serious heart condition? And that disclaimer actually did not appear. It appeared right at the very beginning of the conversation that, it's no replacement for a medical professional. But when I asked it that $64,000 question, no, it didn't say, look, I don't really know, I can give you a suggestion. It said, no, you don't. And that was interesting to me too.
Yeah, it is. So that's kind of the risk of cutting edge, bleeding edge type technologies like ChatGPT, which can appear to the layperson to be quite definitive and authoritative. But there is a risk that it learns something that's not entirely correct off the internet, which is its foundation.
Yeah.
And if it churns out the wrong information, then it becomes a source of misinformation. So that is one of the big risks of AI.
Now, with touching on a concept which is of special interest to me, because I think people are unfair when they assess these kind of technologies. Now, in the case of large language models like ChatGPT, people focus on whether they are or are not perfect, whether there are problems, forgetting the issue that there are problems and imperfections with human doctors too, which I think is the more appropriate comparator.
No, it's a good one. So ChatGPT is quite remarkable in the sense that it's the first AI model that's mature enough to, and you might have read about this, pass the USMLE medical school exam, right?
Yeah.
It's as good as a graduate doctor when it comes to answering medical school exam questions. And that could be because it is that smart, or actually it is an indictment on the medical school system that it rewards rote learning of the biological, the mechanistic systems that we teach Western doctors, right? So it could be one or the other. But so you're right. ChatGPT is really the next evolution of very clever AI models, as you say, large language models, generative AI models that take advantage of the fact that now we have a lot of data that exists that a human being can never get across, but a machine could possibly analyze and integrate. So because of that, there are a lot of potentials for technologies like ChatGPT to not only reduce the administrative burden for clinicians. For example, there was a journal article in Lancet Digital Health that talks about the fact that ChatGPT can actually write discharge summaries as well as junior doctors.
Yeah.
And that would remove a lot of the paperwork from our doctors so that they are free up to look after patients.
Okay, now let's talk about some other examples of really exciting trends in medical AI. Now, one thing that you are keen to emphasize in your work on this is the combination of AI and genetics or genomics. Could you just explain something about this general area?
Yeah, so genetics, genomics, and in fact, all the other omics is a whole new, omics is a whole new area of science. It's really the biological study of the molecular processes within a cell or an organism, an organ, whatever the unit is, right? So, we've got genomics, the study of genes, proteomics, the study of proteins, metabolomics, the study of molecules. So that, there's different types of omics. And this whole area of science is exploding, and it's exploding because of AI. In the past, human beings struggled to understand the interaction between all the different parts of a cell or an organ. Well, now with AI, you can do it. And in fact, you can model it. You can now have virtual twins of organs and cells and do all sorts of studies on that. And that's the power of machines being able to analyze big data that humans can't do, right? So when it comes to genomics, for example, the Human Genome Project, was deemed to be completed in 2003 when we only had 92% of the human genome mapped. But actually, we only mapped 100% just last year in 2022. Now, when you add the genome of the human being that's been mapped with AI, you get this amplification of the power to analyze genes, and then the power to, when you add genetic engineering and editing like CRISPR technology, it only came around 10 years ago, then you learn how to manipulate the genome and start to cut out genes that are defective and replace them with normal genes. Single gene hereditary disorders like sickle cell anemia and beta thalassemia, that's being treated now in human beings, obviously in trials, but and we've been successful. So that is really the cusp. We're on the cusp of being able to tinker with our own genome because of AI.
Yeah. Because the genome is, after all, it's a huge thing. It involves an enormous amount of information, something like 30,000 genes, and each gene is made up of amino acids, which are also very complex. So we have an extremely, one way to describe this is that we have, the Human Genome Product opened up the book of life, but the book was still in code, right? And you're saying that we are now making great progress in decoding that book of life.
Correct. We're learning how to decode the genome. So we're learning how to read it, and we're learning how to translate it. But the beauty now is we're learning how to write it, to rewrite it, right? And that's challenging, but I think that is actually the other. On one hand, you've got AI, which is about to transform health. On the other hand, you've got genetic engineering, which will also transform health, right?
Okay, well, let's talk about a really interesting example, and that is life extension. Now, some people might say that we already know how to extend life, maintain a healthy weight, don't smoke, ease up on the pizza, etc. So what is special about life extension and this combination of AI and genetics?
Yeah, so life extension has to say, I mean, we know the recipe to have a longer life. There's a lot of research around preventive and public health, around diet and exercise. No question about it. In fact, diet and exercise helps you with practically everything, including dementia, heart disease, you name it. Life extension, longevity medicine is really about taking this to the next level. How do we remain in the preventive health space, but look at now biomarkers of aging and longevity. And this is where AI and machine learning comes in, where we do the analysis on our own genes and our cell, and we learn what are the markers for healthy aging and what are the markers for unhealthy aging. And then we figure out how to basically treat that. One of the first things that a lot of researchers in this space have tried to do is to classify aging as a disease, right? Because aging at the moment is seen as a natural progression of being human. You just get old. But some people argue, actually, no, it should be treated like a disease, just like osteoporosis was seen as normal, but now is seen as a disease. So that's one thing, is AI will help us come up with the biomarkers so that we learn about aging. For example, AI, deep learning was instrumental in helping us understand the epigenetic clock in our cells, right? How how old a person is based on DNA methylation. It's kind of like, it's like telomeres, the length of the telomeres, or we'll talk about our age. But so AI helps with that. But AI takes the next step, because AI now is helping us find drug targets to tailor interventions and therapeutics around our biomarkers so that we can potentially reverse aging, not only lengthen life, but reverse it so that we actually potentially can become younger. And so that's the exciting part of it.
Okay, because I think there's what could be called a boring version of life extension, which is increasing the average life expectancy by, 10 years, right? So people are more likely to live to the age of 95 or 100. And then there's science fiction life extension, which is people living to, 200, 300 or whatever. So do you really think that there is a realistic opportunity to achieve that kind of exciting life extension?
It's a great question, right? So there are some people in this space, like Aubrey de Grey is a very well-known longevity researcher. He's got this long beard. He looks a bit like Jesus.
Yeah, I've met Aubrey, actually. He's a wonderful character.
You met him? Ah, fantastic. I've never met him, but I read a lot of his stuff. And
he's the kind of Rasputin of genetics, right?
Well, that's it. But no, so look, scientists believe that the natural kind of limit of our human lifespan potentially is about 125 years, based on the fact that we've had, the longest human has lived to 122. And so 125 is probably the maximum. But some people believe that with the right scientific breakthroughs in terms of stem cell, regenerative medicine, rejuvenation, gene therapy, organ replacement, potentially humans could live beyond that. Even some people have argued forever, right? If you can keep replacing your organs. And, there's a whole science called parabiosis, which is about young blood transfusion. In mice, if you take the blood of young mice, put it in old mice, the old mice appear to become younger. All the biomarkers of aging reverses, right? So there's this, in humans, it hasn't been proven, but definitely in mice, it seems to work. So there's this whole kind of science around this. How do we beat death, more or less? Yeah.
So have you heard of the ship of Theseus? The ship of Theseus. Okay, yeah. So the ship of Theseus, just for the listeners, it's the idea that the ancient Greeks celebrated the return of Theseus to Athens, I think, by recreating the voyage in a boat. But over hundreds of years, each plank of the boat got replaced several times. And the question was, is it the same ship as it was in the first place? Now, if you kept replacing bits of humans, you could ask the same question, right? I guess the crucial thing here is the brain, because you could replace you could even replace the human body itself, but you'd need to have a brain. Otherwise, there would be nothing that you were maintaining. Wow. Right? But the brain itself does wear out eventually too, does it not?
Well, it's a great question, right? Some people have argued that one possible route to immortality is this science fiction concept of mind downloading. Right. Downloading your mind into a machine so that you can live forever. I mean, that brings it to the next level. Is a copy of your mind the same as you, or is it just someone else? So it's a good question. So that is the ship of Theseus argument. So if you start to replace your neurons one at a time, do you still remain the same? One other way to put it, and it's a thought experiment, is every night when you go to sleep, you close your eyes and you become unconscious. When you wake up with your memories. Are you the same person? You've got the memories. Do you know what I mean? How do you know you are the same person?
Yeah,
you just don't know.
You're right. The brain is not the same today as it was yesterday. So that's absolutely true.
That is correct. So
all right. Well, let's stick with this brain, because obviously this ties in with the area of Alzheimer's research.
Yes.
Now, could you just say something about how what concrete steps are being taken in AI to tackle Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI is helping to tackle Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia through three ways, really. One, being able to diagnose the condition earlier. So AI is helping with better brain imaging. I mean, you know all the studies, but just this year there was a research study published in PLOS One from Mass General around exactly this: AI helping diagnose Alzheimer's based on data from MRIs from patients even before they have symptoms. So that's picking up the disease earlier, so you can treat it earlier. Then the second way that AI can help is to, once someone has diagnosis, is to understand how the pathogenesis and the progress of the disease. Why is it that the symptoms develop? And again, there's lots of different studies on this. And then the third one is really then helping people live at home longer. So AI, robotics, remote monitoring, But I think what's exciting is there is a fourth space as well, which is AI trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's. So now, similar to what I've talked about before around longevity, AI is now, we can use AI to try to analyze drugs to repurpose them to treat Alzheimer's, right? So it's the amazing thing about AI now, and you might have heard about this, is that it can look at existing drug libraries, look at drug targets for different conditions, and find an existing drug that can fit into that receptor. So a drug that might be used for some other condition could potentially be repurposed. We've done this for COVID, or we've tried to do this for COVID, and we're now looking at potential drugs for Alzheimer's as well.
But now Alzheimer's is an interesting case because in the last few decades, there's been a phenomenal amount of research into early diagnosis and also treatment. And both of those, as far as I'm aware, still seem a pretty long way off. I mean, we still cannot treat Alzheimer's effectively, and early diagnosis, I don't think it may have been shown in principle in some ways, but it hasn't really been rolled out as far as I'm aware. So Alzheimer's seems to be a really tough nut to crack.
It is a very tough nut to crack. So you're right about the diagnosis. I mean, we can now use AI to pick Alzheimer's 7 years before symptoms start. But these are all experimental, right? They haven't actually, this is not in production. So you're right with that. And then with treatment, you're right too. There have been a few very promising studies looking at beta amyloid, drugs that target to reduce that. But then, number one, those drugs have shown to have a lot of side effects, like serious side effects. People have died in the latest trials. And number two, there's still query around that theory of the cause of AI. No one really knows whether beta amyloid is truly the cause. I mean, there's one paper I read just last week, actually, that came out that said that amyloidosis is actually anti-pathogenic, it's antibacterial, antiviral, and it's the body's response to potentially an infectious agent. So that's the other theory of Alzheimer's. It's caused by an infectious agent. And people are trying to find what the agent is. Is it herpes simplex? Is it bacteria? I mean, there are lots of, is it from gingivitis in your gums? That's another theory of Parkinson's as well. So very interesting space.
Now, just goes back to Aubrey de Grey, the Rasputin of aging. It's a while since I've looked at this, but his basic perspective is that aging is essentially a large set of separate engineering problems, each of which can be addressed separately. And doing that is the same as curing aging. Now, there is another perspective, which is that aging is this fundamental process that affects every cell in the body, telomeres wind down, everything eventually wears out. So I guess your approach to super aging or aging is based on that first premise, I think, that we have here a set of tractable engineering problems. Is that right?
Well, it's not my approach. It's the approach that exists that I'm kind of talking about. I mean, I'm a bit agnostic about it, to be honest, because none of this new developments is ever going to help stop me from dying in the next 30, 40 years, right? But
You're making me sad now, Erwin.
that's right. But you remember, you have to remember, there is the law of thermodynamics. There is I think there's a second law where things will degenerate. Okay, it's just a law in the universe. So unless you put in lots and lots of energy, a human will likely going to die, right? So to save one life, you're probably going to have to burn up energy that will probably kill. So it's the so what they say about transfusion from young blood is a good metaphor for this. So for people who want to live forever, they're going to have to somehow take something from someone else or from a lot of other people. So whether that's right, what I mean? Not just physically, but obviously from the point of view of population growth, from the point of view of the environmental impact of people who are going to live forever, that means then really we're going to have to start stopping reproduction of new babies if adults are going to live forever.
We could end up with these billionaires who are 300 years old, but each of their organs has come from one person who's now dead.
Well, you can definitely bet your dollar that Elon Musk is funding longevity research. I've read it. I mean, it's maybe a conspiracy theory, but that will be one of the things that he'll be thinking about, right? It's how does he? I mean, he's investing money in definitely AI, or I step back on it, but neural linked, brain computer interfaces. So I'm sure he's thinking about how to cheat death, and he won't be the only one. A lot of billionaires and rich people are now on neutral sickles, and they're taking metformin and low dose psychedelics and all sorts of rapamycin, you name it, senolytics and antioxidants to try to lengthen their life anyway. So and this is all based on some research, but it's not strong.
Well, I would bet my house on the fact that Elon Musk or anyone else will never be able to download their brain onto a computer. And this is the most absurd idea that I've ever heard in science. Do you agree? Challenge me if you want. I mean, I think this is a completely ridiculous idea.
I think it's going to happen in the sense that people are going to make simulations of loved ones on death, but the point is that it'll be a simulation. It won't be the same person. It'll be a copy.
Yeah. It was basically a glorified photo in a way. I mean, nothing more than that.
Like now I'm talking to you. I mean, I don't know if you watch Black Mirror, the Netflix series.
Yes,
there was one episode exactly on this. Someone dies, and there was a copy on the phone, and they talk to the person. So it'd be like you, or you talking to me. If it's possible in the future that you could talk to me like you're doing now.
Yes.
Sound exactly like me, as you say, pass the Turing test, but it won't be me for sure.
Yeah. No, what I think the fascinating thing about that is it is completely plausible. I mean, there is nothing, and in fact, I would say completely plausible even now. We could do that.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary idea.
Now, deepfake AI can copy anybody, and not only the look, but the voice and the mannerisms, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely it can be done.
Let's talk about one last thing, Erwin, and that's something that I think is really fascinating, robot surgery. Has AI already made an impact here?
Well, it's that's one of the challenges of AI, actually. So if you're in health, you could accept AI taking over some of the cognitive aspects of the care that you deliver. So, analysis of big data and helping support our diagnosis, and maybe even coming up with recommendations for treatment, which is what we've been talking about. But when it comes to actual surgery, so surgeons would say, hang on, robots can't do what I do because it requires dexterity plus technical expertise plus experience plus knowledge, right? And they're right. Robots can't do that yet, but you know what? They're progressing. So there is this star robot that's been developed by Johns Hopkins University. It stands for Smart Tissue Autonomous Robot, right? So in 2016, they published a paper in Science, Translation of Medicine, where that robot did a better job at suturing than a human. Then the year after that, the same robot was able to make more precise cuts than a human. And this is when it comes to removal of tumors compared to a human surgeon. Now, and you think, well, that's amazing. But guess what? Last year, and you might have seen this in the news actually, the same robot, right, the STAR robot, was able to anastomose, join two bits of gut together using laparoscopic surgery better than a human. All right. And so that's one of the most technically difficult things for a surgeon to do, is to, through keyhole surgery, join two bits of bowel together and not have any leakage. And the robot could do it. Now, obviously, it was all experimental. It was all under supervision. It was all done in pigs, right? It wasn't done in humans. But this shows us that even with robotics, AI is taking very quick steps towards potentially replacing part of what a surgeon does, if not all of it.
So how do you measure whether this arterial surgery is better or worse?
Yeah, and that's the challenge of AI in general, actually, is that we still lack proper randomized controlled, placebo-controlled trials to show that AI supported care or AI care is just as good or better than humans. We do a lot of research around comparisons, but they're not blinded, they're not done in large populations. And a lot of those trials that show positive results are not repeatable, they're not replicative. When people try to repeat them in another hospital, they don't work. And that's the challenge of AI, is that AI tends to work in a single location because it's learned how to do it there. But when you try to take the same model and put it into another facility, it doesn't work. And that's a challenge. So with robotic surgery, it's just like any other surgery. There is a lack of research in general in surgery, because it's hard to do research with surgery. With surgery. So because how do you blind it? How do you placebo it? How do you do a sham operation? People try to do it. Put someone fully under general anesthetic, pretend to do a cut, but don't cut, right? How do you compare that?
It's a fascinating point. And this is something that people don't really understand about surgery often, right? That it's not properly tested in the sense that placebo-controlled trials are not done. And so you're saying that because of those kind of issues, because people don't like the ethical consequences of performing sham surgery, that's holding up the development of robotic surgery.
Well, no. In fact, robotic surgery is going gangbusters. A lot of those big companies, Da Vinci and other companies, I mean, they are the robotics, the surgical robot companies are now definitely developing the next generation powered by AI, and they're already releasing models where, at the moment, they are complementary and adjunct to the surgeon's skills. But I can envision that very soon they'll start to take over some. You'll start off with simple things like stitching up a wound, and potentially to more complex surgery, to the point where actually they may become better than humans. That day, I am actually positive will come, just like robots can now make cars better than humans. They're going to be able to do it. Definitely.
I see. So as long as the process is gradual, it will happen. That's what you're saying. We can't just jump into a situation where we have a study where... if you're saying 50% of patients are assigned to the robot and 50% of the patients are assigned to a real surgeon.
So there's a difference between development in the research and experimental space and production. So health is highly risk averse. There's a lot of bureaucracy and regulation. And for something like an autonomous robot to be implemented in a hospital, it will have to go through a lot of steps. First of all, approval by the national regulators. So in the US, it's the FDA, in Australia, it's the TGA. In the UK, you will have your own, where they will have to pass all the tests, including having the evidence from research that it is better than current practice.
Well, Erwin, it has been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure, Felix.
Thank you for listening. I'm Felix Beecher. Ping me on LinkedIn for more information on Omdia's services in healthcare technology. See you next time.